The home of the common Joe and the common Sally in the know, even more so than all those media talking heads. Woo! Well. Here we are again, another episode of the OCF. That's me, JPC, and those two acronyms stand for the Outlaw of College Football, and Jesse Paul Clark on Facebook, spelled J-S-S-E without the I. Also, I am on Twitter at OCF Productions. Now, getting right to it. Oklahoma's really struggling. I mean, they're struggling probably a lot worse than what a lot of people expected. They're standing at 3-3 right now. But, there's been a lot of extenuating circumstances that Oklahoma just couldn't afford to happen, and they've happened. Number one being Dylan Gabriel, although he's probably not going to be a great NFL quarterback one day. He's a good enough serviceable quarterback that should he get knocked out like he did, then it puts Oklahoma in a bad situation. But that's not the only thing here that's laying in the grass and sort of undermining Oklahoma and Brent Venables and his first venture as a head coach. Not only is this his first year at Oklahoma, it's his first year ever as a head coach. And with the advent of, like I said in the lead up, the NIL and the transfer portal, it's made it pretty hard for a first-year coach that's never coached before to come in and have the guy that was before him basically gut the team. I mean, you can't really expect Brent Venables to come into Oklahoma and maybe I was expecting too much as well, but you can't really expect the man to come in here and have a highly successful season his first year when about 40 players were taken from him, whether it be graduation, whether it be Lincoln Riley tampering with the program before he was ever at USC, or whether it's just people transferring out to other programs. That's a lot to take in. And then on top of it, your starting quarterback that you brought in from Central Florida, the transfer that you brought in, gets injured. The NCAA is to blame for this shit. Now, granted, people are going to say, well, everybody else is dealing with it too. That's true, but not everybody has a first-year coach in his very first gig to have to deal with this crap. Now, they do have two great recruiting classes back-to-back coming in. And you need to remember, people, that most great coaches, they do have a subpar season the first year because they're trying to weed out all the slackers. Some coaches have a decent season. They come in and do astronomically great, like Larry Coker and Gus Malzahn come to mind. But you see where they're at now. Gus Malzahn's not at Auburn anymore, and Larry Coker's out of coaching altogether. Both of those coaches come in and done well their first season, but they didn't pan out. Great coaches like Bear Bryant, Bob Stoops, one of your own, Nick Saban, even another Alabama guy, Gene Stallings, they all come in and had very subpar years the first year, either going 7-6 or 7-5, barely over 500. And Bear Bryant, in his first year at Alabama, went 5-1, so he was 500. In his first year at Texas A&M, even worse, he went 1-10. And we see where Bear Bryant ended up. I've already said that in a previous video. But the NCAA needs to lay some ground rules for all this tampering that's going on. Now, well, it's not really tampering, it's just the transfer portal. Yeah, it's just another name for tampering. The NFL has rules and guidelines for tampering and trade deadlines and all that stuff. And these players are going to go around wanting to get paid like they're professionals, well, then they're going to have to go by some rules. They want the old adage goes, their cake and eating it too kind of deal. They want the good without some of the bad. You can't have all good without a little bit of bad. You can't have all good without some kind of rules in place. Because even in my situation with Alabama, we went out and got Jahmyr Gibbs from Georgia Tech. These middle of the road teams are going to really be affected. It ain't just Oklahoma. You got teams like Georgia Tech, Vanderbilt, teams in the non-Power 5 schools, Wyoming, UL Monroe, teams like that have a good player. Well, that player's not going to be deterred by having to sit out a year anymore because the transfer portal just allows them to go straight in there and leave. No job really offers that. Most jobs, now you can do it like in every regular, everyday society like we're in, but the etiquette even with us is that you should give a 2-week notice, right? Or something, man. There's got to be some kind of rules in place for all this tampering. And the way that it was handled by Lincoln Riley, and they can say what they want to say, and I hate to keep coming back and harping on this, but the guy was recruiting for USC before he ever left for Oklahoma. And that right there in itself put Oklahoma behind the 8 ball, automatically. Or made them, I just don't get it, man. I don't get why the NCAA thinks that this is okay. They've been doing this for a number of years, and now all of a sudden they wonder why football is going away from them eventually, and how they've been X'd out of the whole deal. And they do have the NCAA basketball tournament still to cling on to, but basketball is going to get smart too eventually and make their way away from the NCAA. And the people at the NCAA, they don't understand why people want to get away from them. Well, it's this kind of inconsistent bullshit that they allow to happen. They have single-handedly, in my opinion, helped hurt a traditionally well-known powerhouse name in Oklahoma football. Now, how can that be good for football? I know Texas fans like to beat Oklahoma. Hell, even Alabama fans like to beat Oklahoma, and Oklahoma vice versa likes to beat Texas fans. But you need those rivalries. You need those teams to stay good. You don't need to have someone come in and gut the program. And how are you going to lose 40 players and expect a team to come back the next year and compete on that level? See, Lincoln Riley didn't have to deal with that shit. See, he went into a situation where there wasn't really that big of high expectations. He didn't go into a team that was 11-2. And a team that where he could just take all the players with him. He took some of the main stars from Oklahoma to USC with him. Meanwhile, Brent Venables don't have that option. He can't take Clemson's players with him because, hell, he's the assistant coach. They're not going to come with him. They're going to stay with Dabo Swinney. If it had been Dabo Swinney that went to Oklahoma, then, yeah, he might be able to get some of the Clemson players. Doesn't make it right, though, especially if you're still employed by the university. And that's why I say, man, they've got to have some kind of rules put in place. I know you can't just muzzle it all together because you'll have these pansies out here that want to file a lawsuit because their relatives want to make millions of dollars right now. But you're just going to have to stand up to them. Or either we're going to have to get a new governing body because this shit can't keep going on. Like I said, I know you can't muzzle it, but at least put some rules in place where a former coach of a team can't be recruiting for his new employer while he's still employed for the university he's about to leave. And the Oklahoma fans out there that want Brent Venables fired already, man, y'all have got to realize these extenuating circumstances are in place. Because if you don't, if y'all get rid of Brent Venables after this year or even next year, it's going to set you back, man. You're going to start having Nebraska-type issues of the Frank Solich variety. Is what's going to happen. Or Tennessee, even worse. Tennessee's just now getting stuff rectified. Y'all keep going through coaches, man, and being impatient. That's what's going to happen. Now, granted, if he comes back next year and these guys are still rolling over, that's fine. But he's just in a weeding out process. He just couldn't kick everybody off the team. Just like when Nick Saban, when he come into Alabama, he had players like Simeon Castile eating chicken in the locker room on Mike Shula. He had to get that kind of element out of the program, but he couldn't just kick them off the team. He had to ride it out and just hope for the best And luckily, he ended up going 7-6 and good enough to at least go to a bowl game. But there's going to be a weeding out process, especially with the kind of culture that Lincoln Riley left behind and the way he tried to gut and deep six the Oklahoma program for no apparent reason other than maybe Joe Castiglione hurt his feelings by going to the SEC. But anyway, I just want to put that out there for you Oklahoma fans that are trying to or sort of doubting Brent Venables and letting you know that this is an extenuating circumstances that not many first-year coaches and first-time coaches have ever had to deal with. And I think you need to pump the brakes and get behind this man. And that's all I got to say about that. Like, share, comment, and subscribe to this channel. And as always, KMCA to all the other teams. Oh, if you don't mind, there's a little heart down here. Thanks button. Hit that. Throw a few dollars in the coffers. Get me off the YouTube team. Class is now dismissed.